I want to remember that we are on sacred land, stripped from and stolen land, land that holds all the stories of violence and slavery, land that holds past and present undocumented and immigrant stories, land that knows the truth of the injustices no matter how many times history gets rewritten. Where I am, this land is the land of the Tongva people. In my life and arts practice and on this land, I strive to behave and act in accordance and alignment with what Indigenous people, the original stewards of this land, are asking of me. I also acknowledge the sadness that Native peoples have over the loss and destruction of their land. And on this land and what it remembers, I stand with and upon the shoulders of a great many. I want to honor the fierce, the fighters, the writers, the truth seekers, the teachers, the mentors and spiritual elders, the Indigenous, the Black, brown, and queers, the folks who came from harder and harsher past and still found a way to fight for me, their future. I want to remember so I don't fall victim to worry, victim to isolation. I want to remember that I can move mountains with community. I get strong in community. I want to remember that I am most powerful with community, that my magic is magnified in community. And I want to remember that there are folks who couldn't be here. There are folks that couldn't be here. There are folks who couldn't be here. And I want to remember that, therefore, my time with you is sacred. That whatever freedoms I have been fought for, and that 60 years ago, I might not have had the chance to be me on stage or Zoom or at Brooklyn College with you. Our bodies, like land and water, remember. So I want to honor your bodies as places where kisses and bruises have been planted. I want to honor all the ways you've changed for your own freedom and all the ways you fought for others' freedom. And today, I share the ongoing story of finding my own truth and freedom, working from the inside out. And I hope that in hearing some of my story and thoughts, you will recognize your own stories, victories, strengths, your own journey, and you will remember what you have survived to bring you into this moment and all the precious lessons you carry as a result, which help you move you forward in the new chapters of your life. Thank you. So with that, thank you for the love, thank you. With that, I wanna know, you can kind of put up your hands or react or however you wanna do it, but how many queer people are out there tonight? Got one, couple, there we go, some, okay, we got a couple of hands. Okay, great, great, great. We got a little crew of queers, fierce queers in the crowd. And how many people who think they're straight? And if somebody's gonna respond, and you gotta catch them, because I think that there should be, you know, like how there's LGBTQ, IATSSGL, and it's growing. I like to say queer for short, but like an umbrella term, right? But I believe that they should add the C in there, you know what I'm saying, for college, because like everybody that I know had something, you know what I'm saying? They were like bendy in college. That's all I'm saying, okay? So right now, I know that y'all are in pandemic isolation, but any chance you get, be bendy, because this is the time to do it, is what I'm saying. And who wants to really be straight anymore? I mean, it's kind of boring. Anyway, that's my personal opinion. Anyway, so my name is Dilo, like Hia said, Saofang said, and I am transgender. It's been about 6 years since I've been on testosterone, which is why I sound like Drake on autotune. And you know, all this time I tell people, like, this is where I tell cis and straight people, I'm like, you know, if you know a trans person, please do not, this is my PSA, right? Do not ask us about our genitalia. Like trans people, non-binary people, we are beautiful, magical people. Do not reduce us to the junk underneath our clothing. Having said that, I know some of y'all are wondering, well, in his presentation, is Dilo gonna tell us if he has a penis or not? I need to know, because otherwise I'm gonna be wishing that he just tips the Zoom down just enough, just to see, maybe. And no, I do not have a penis. I have 3. Why, thank you. Yes, I do. They're in the other room, actually. Anyway, so I could be wearing one right now, who knows? Anyway, so I would say that one of the things that is most difficult for trans folks is that but you know what? This is just a side note. I was thinking the other day, like if I had a surgically attached penis, what would be the very first thing that I would want to do with it? You know what I'm saying? And I think it would be to just put it on a table. You know what I'm saying? Just be like, hey, everybody, look, my dick is on the table. That's how you know I'm a real guy. That's what they do all the time. Anyway, so moving on, one of the worst things for trans people, if you're trans, you know this already, and or queer, gender nonconforming people, is the bathroom, okay? But like, I stopped using the women's bathroom a long time ago, like probably even before I was even considering myself trans. I was still a BOI, which is what people these days, or actually in my generation called stud, or it was basically, like there's butch people, but that's like white folks. And then studs are like brown masculine women. You know what I'm saying? Studs or AG, some people call them. Anyway, so I'm trying to give you like LGBTQ history of identifier labels. Anyway, so when I was a stud, I was like, you know what, it's just hard enough going into the women's bathroom because people are like, oh, there's a man in the bathroom. So like I just stayed away from it and I just stayed using the men's bathroom, right? And I got to tell you that I pass by women's bathrooms, like thank God for gender neutral bathrooms, but like I pass by women's bathrooms and I get so sad. Like I shed a tear, you know what I'm saying? Because the women's bathrooms have always been, in my experience, so clean, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't smell bad, and it's just like people and like people who use the women's bathroom, like they just have a different set of ethics. I don't know, it's not ethics, it's etiquette, because nobody takes a shit in the women's bathroom. Can I say shit? I'm going to say shit. But you know what I'm saying? Everybody just does their tinkle tinkle and then that's it, unless it's an emergency. But the men's bathroom is the complete opposite. It's like when I sit in the stall, because I sit down to do all my business, it's like this orchestral cacophony of sounds and grunting, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh my God, do you need help? Like, should I call somebody? And because men and people who use the men's bathroom, they don't give a crap about what they put into their bodies. They're like, oh, I'm going to go out. I can always use the public restroom. And they just gorge themselves on whatever it is, knowing that it's going to upset their stomach. But this doesn't happen with the other bathroom. I'm just saying. And the smells alone can kill you. I remember this one time, I have to share this with you because this is how you're gonna know about my life, my trials and tribulations. But so I was at the Barnes and Noble over there in Union Square. I know it's no longer there, rest in peace. But back in the day, I was there, and that Barnes and Noble in Union Square was where everybody in the world went to the bathroom, right? So I'm at the Barnes and Noble looking at books, because I'm smart. And then all of a sudden it was like, Dilo, you need to go to the bathroom. And I was like, oh my God. And like, it's like one of those moments you're like, oh my God, what happened? Like, how did this happen? Like, what did I do in my life to get me to this point? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was trying to think about like what I ate, like I was just like, what happened here? And I'm like stressing and I was like, oh, I need to go, right? I know nobody can use the men's bathrooms. Living with 3 men, you feel me, okay? You might as well just make that a two bathrooms next apartment. Okay, anyway. So I'm like running up the stairs, right? And I get to the very top and I get into the men's bathroom and there's 2 stalls. And of course, one is out of order. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Because somebody's in the other bathroom. And so I'm just standing there and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm about to burst. Like what is happening here? I'm like, please. And I'm like, asshole, please don't fail me now. And my asshole's like, no, dog, I got you. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, okay, cool. And I'm like butt clenched and I'm just standing there. And then like time passes and this guy's not leaving. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm about to burst. And then my asshole's like, I'm tired. And I'm like, no. And then right then the guy leaves the bathroom and I walk in there and I'm about to go and I look at the toilet seat and there's a shit streak on the motherfucking toilet seat. And I'm like, what happened here? What happened here? What? Okay, you know what? Never mind. I'm just going to grab some toilet paper and I'm just going to make it rain all over this. I'm just going to make it rain, rain, rain. Put all the toilet paper down. And then I reach for the toilet paper and there's a shit streak on the motherfucking toilet paper. And I was like, why would you do this? Why did you do this? What, you have a vendetta against toilet paper? You were like, oh, I hate toilet paper, so I'm just gonna wipe my ass on the toilet seat. And just for good measure, I'm just gonna spread my cheeks and wipe it on the toilet roll. I know, I see what you're saying and you're with me and I feel you. And I know what you're thinking too. You're like, oh my God, Dilo, what happened? Did you shit your pants? Did you shit your pants? And I just want everybody to know that I believe that as adults, we should be allowed to shit our pants one time and get a get out of jail free card. You know what I'm saying? Like, you feel me? You feel me? Yeah, but I just want y'all to know that no, I did not shit my pants. And you know why? It's because my own shit saw that and got so scared it crawled right back in my asshole. It was like, man, not coming out. That shit is scary. So I just want y'all to know what it's like. I have more bathroom stories, but I thought in order to not waste time, we'll move on with my story. Okay, so I grew up, I actually was born in Queens, and there's a maraca going on somewhere. Do you hear maraca?
I muted. I muted it.
I was like, okay, party. Okay, so anyway, yeah, Queens represent, there we go. What, you don't have Brooklyn Cup? Just playing. So yes, I was born in Queens and then, but I was 2 when we moved to SoCal, and we moved to a hick town called Lancaster, California. It was, it was hick. Like when you think about those Western movies, it was like that, like desert in fact, they film Westerns and desert scenes in Lancaster. So I was like, it was like cows, horses, rodeos, and the KKK. And so when growing up, my parents, immigrants, I know that there are a lot of immigrants here, and our people, man, we love to recreate what it was like on the motherland, but here in the US, you know what I'm saying? Like my parents had a sustainable garden before it was chic, and they would barter with their friends, whatever vegetables they made, right? Or they grew. And then my father was like, listen, we didn't come to this country so that you can play a fool. You're going to study and study until you become a doctor, and you're going to study some more until you die. And like his whole, that was like his whole way is like, don't waste time. We're here in America. We were not allowed to waste water, for example. He was like, you think you're going to take a shower in this house? No way. Go to the kitchen and get a bowl. And he'd fill up this big bucket. And that's how I took my baths growing up, is with a bucket baths. I took my first shower last week. It was dope. I really like it. I see why you all waste water. I totally get it. And my father was like, don't waste electricity. If you need to go to the fridge at night, you quickly go, you on the light and go to the fridge, get what you want off the light and go. No, don't even do that. The fridge has its own bloody light. You just go there in the dark, get what you want and leave. And they always say, I think that going green is just a fancier way of saying being immigrant. You know what I'm saying? Like, going green, like who's green really? Like that feels like some white people co-opting shit. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it should be called going brown. Like that's my own personal. A bucket baths do unite us. Y'all, yes, I see that. Oh my God, so many people y'all feel me. Y'all were with me in those moments. Okay, so the other thing. Okay, so we grew up like that. And then also we weren't allowed to watch TV, right? Like I said that a little bit before. It's like, so when me and my sister, like when you're not allowed to watch TV, some kid at school is like, oh, I love Tom and Jerry. It's my favorite cartoon. And you're like, me too. What's a cartoon? You know what I'm saying? So we knew that we had to like get up on our pop culture, and we love cartoons. So Saturday morning, my father would be at work. Oh, I forgot to tell you, because I want to place this. My father came here in the 70s, in the late 70s, as a medical professional. This was when America was actually welcoming its immigrants during the brain drain, because they were professional status. That is a lot of privilege that I have. And even though there's been a 30-year war in Sri Lanka, and it ended about 10 years ago, but we say ended because so many Tamil people have still been displaced, and they're still looking for the disappeared folks that the army has taken. It's just a lot of like the wars and its after effects are still very much there in Sri Lanka. So we came pre-war. So that's just a little bit of context for you. And so which part was I on? So my father would be at work. And my mother would be in the backyard, and me and my sister would go to watch TV, but we'd have to be this close to the TV because the volume had to be really low. So because she couldn't hear. So we'd be like looking, catching up, like, and then my mother would come in and she'd be like, "What are you doing? I told you not to watch the TV. Go. And she'd start to stumble over her words. And me and my sister would be like, "Come on, let's go." So we like run to our rooms, but then we were punks because kids are punks. And then we would make fun of what just happened. We were like, "Shani, remember?" Amma was like, "Don't play that." And she's like, no. And then she was like, "You better stop watching TV. I'm gonna," and like we're laughing. And then my amma heard us. That's my mother. And she rolled up on us gangster. She was like, "Oh, you want to make fun of me, huh?" And she proceeded to beat us royally. You know, that special way that is passed through the melanin skin of our ancestors with the syllables, you know what I'm saying? "Don't ever make fun of me again. Huh?" And we're like, "Okay, she'll stop talking." And you think the physical abuse was bad? The verbal abuse was worser. Yes, I said worser because it was that bad. If you talk back to my amma, she'd be like, "You better shut your mouth or I'll thrash your head against the wall until blood comes." The worstest one was, "I'll dash your teeth and give it in your hand." I told my friend this. My friend was like, "At least she was going to give your teeth back." I was like, "That's rude." Anyway, so this was me growing up, and when I grew up and I looked like a boy, right? I was assigned female at birth, but I looked like a boy, and nobody tripped because it's so much easier to be assigned female at birth and exhibit masculine behavior than it is to be assigned male at birth and exhibit feminine behavior, right? And everybody was like, "Oh, she's just a tomboy. She's just a tomboy." And so this is what I look like too when I was little. That's little D with his bowl cut. So another immigrant thing. So anyway, we, I just kind of like knew that I was different because none of the other little girls that I grew up with, Exactly, Ariel. So y'all are telling me all the ways that y'all got whooped, chancletas, the spoon. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it's so good. Anyway, so what ended up happening was I knew that I was different. I just kind of was like, "Oh, this is me." I know that I wasn't a bad person. I was just like, "Yeah, this is me." But everybody was like, "Oh, Dila will grow out of it." In my mind, I was like, "Grow out of what?" I'm like, "This is me, I'm like, grow into something else. No, thank you." So in about the 4th grade, I went to a Baptist school because there were no good public schools at that time in that area. And my parents were also like, "We want our kids to go to college. We're going to send them private school," but all of them were super duper Christian, right? Like super Southern Baptist, right? And white folk Baptist, right? So it was like all about the fire and the brimstone. It was about accept Jesus into your heart or you're going to go to hell. And so I did accept Jesus into my heart. My Hindu ass was like, "I need insurance because I heard hell is super hot and Lancaster is hella hot. So I'm just going to ask him twice to come into my heart." Jesus is my best friend. I love Jesus. I really do. I'm not messing. I love me some Jesus. I just don't like other people's Jesuses because that other people's Jesuses are like, they make Jesus to be a real asshole. And I'm like, that's not Jesus. Anyway, So I used to pray to Jesus and all my 10,000 Hindu gods to be a boy. And that's what I thought was good. That felt more feasible than me having to switch into something that I wasn't. So I was like 11 years old, and I remember I was like, dang, like I just started, I got my period. And in Tamil-Sri Lankan culture, when a little girl gets their period, they give you the Periyapilla ceremony. It's basically a period party as you become a big girl. And so I had this ceremony, but I was like really upset. I didn't want to have anybody invited because they invite everybody and we get gifts and all this. I was like, no way. I was so embarrassed. I was so devastated. And so the following year, when I knew that I had to try and girl up a little bit, I was like, I can't do this. And 11 years old, I said, you know what? If I can't be me by the time I'm 30, because I thought 30 was so old, I was just going to kill myself. And that's what I thought at 11 years old. And I keep looking at my 11-year-old nieces and nephews, and I'm like, they can't make any decision for their life. But at 11 years old, I thought that I was a burden to people. I knew I wasn't wrong, but I thought I was a burden for being a queer person. And sorry, I forgot to say, in the fourth grade, I finally figured out what being a homosexual or a queer person was. And I heard it with only shame because it came from a teacher's mouth. So I decided, I ran away. I ran away at 11 years old. I was very bad at running away. They found me that same day, but I ran away because I was like, I need to just be free. And I know that I can't do that in this household or in this city or whatever. My plan was to jump on the back of a Wonder Bread truck and then go across the country and land someplace else at 11 years old. But this kid was trying to survive whatever he was feeling, right? So I say this because I feel like, absolutely, I told Kayla, I'm with you on that. And yes, Jacqueline, period parties are not the jam. Some people like it though, but I think it's because the gifts. I would. Anyway, so like a Costco card, I mean, I'd be down for, anyway, I'd do a period party right now if I got a Costco card. Anyway, so we would do for Costco cards. So where was I? I always do this to myself. So I ran away. They found me, and I came back to the house, and my mother was like, you have to promise me you'll never run away. And they had a psychiatrist friend, and the psychiatrist friend told them to send me to a counselor. Counselor was like, this is strictly a cultural thing, because I didn't tell her that I was queer. So we just kept it moving on. And the next year, my sister passed away. And she passed away in a plane crash. The plane was on the ground, and another plane came to take land, and it took that small plane out. And this devastated my parents. And nobody was telling me about sibling grief, so I just didn't have none. I just was like super mad at my sister for dying, because I was like, I'm gay. Like, who's going to get my back now? Like, you're supposed to fulfill each one of their dreams, become a doctor, get married, have some kids. You know what I'm saying? And at 13, I felt that pressure on my shoulders, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And, and it's odd, because my parents never went to counseling or therapy or sent me to therapy or anything like that. So meanwhile, there's just this big, dark, gray, heavy gray cloud over our household. And we're just like, I'm not talking with my mama too much or my appa about the stuff that's happening. We're just kind of basically getting by. It's a very weird, like in retrospect, it was very weird. At the present, we were just surviving, And Tamil-Sri Lankan culture, as with a lot of immigrant cultures, is like, you don't talk about your feelings, you just kind of like show a good, strong face. But meanwhile, you're crumbling behind, which is why that never works, which is why it is completely okay to crumble. I want y'all to know it is completely okay to crumble, because you'll get built back up again. But when you don't crumble, you're just on faulty stilts the whole time. Just little side 2 cents. So anyway, so that is what's happening. And meanwhile, I am trying to like just stay straight and cisgender enough so that nobody can tell, and that I can survive high school. And then college, the C. I busted out I was already wearing like, oh, and I forgot to say this one story. The thing that helped me survive Lancaster and high school and junior high was hip hop, because all my life, my parents were telling me, we're immigrants to this country. The KKK roams around here. They were skinheads, really, but we call them all KKK. And because Lancaster has a history of being where the KKK established its first West Coast church in the late 1800s, I think. So a little bit of historical reference, but so they were like, you can get killed for voicing dissent. You could get killed for all of this. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, our people are getting killed. We came here, so you don't have to deal with that. Just keep your head low, don't say shit, and just keep it moving. And you will find financial success, or what they considered freedom. So hip hop to me was like the opposite of what I was being told. It was like and hip hop is, I'm sure you all know, hip hop when it first started was definitely different. If you're from Brooklyn, hip hop roots possibly, but like it was a lot of social justice, socio-political work, very beautiful ways of addressing the things that were affecting the Black or Puerto Rican or Dominican or Caribbean communities. So hey, there we go. Bronx is also in the house. Yes, absolutely, Alana, totally that. So anyway, I was like so into hip hop. I love Queen Latifah. I still love her. And I was like, oh, that's the type of masculine I can be. Like, she is so strong and bold and fierce, and she doesn't give a shit. And she's talking about ladies first, and it's empowering and all of this. And that, I feel like hip hop was like my first lessons in feminism, actually. And so when I got to college, I found other people like me or whatever, and I was writing horrible rhyme at this point, but I was writing rhyme and poetry and getting together with other hip hop heads and social justice people and musicians and artists in LA. And then I wasn't really into school a whole lot. So then I ended up doing a lot of social justice organizing through arts. So I was an arts organizer, but political arts, or it's arts organizing for political causes, rather. So that was like the best, because I got to meet other people. I got to hear about other people's issues. This is when I was doing mostly political work, work around political prisoners, police brutality, AIDS, wars, like anything that were affecting my friends. That's my entrance into activism, was that if my friends and their communities were going through something, then I was going to stand up for them in the same way they were going to stand up for me. So came up doing organizing in LA. And then 2 months before I graduate, I get a call from my parents, and we're running late on time and I am talking too much. So I'm just going to get through these stories. Okay. So I get to, basically my parents find out. This would have been a comedic bit, but I'm not going to do it so that I can save time. But I tell my parents that I'm queer, and they do not take it well at all. So that's when I moved back to New York, and I lived in Brooklyn. Actually, I was on, first I was at Prospect Place in Prospect Heights. This was not how it looks right now, because I've been there and I can't recognize anything. And then I was over on Eastern Parkway in between Franklin and Classen. And then later in closer to 2010 and 11, I moved to Ditmas, or I don't know what they're calling it. It was called Ditmas. Anyway,
Yeah.
So I was in Brooklyn throughout this time, but right when I was, I was super young and I didn't know how to do life all of a sudden. I was like, my family doesn't support me. They didn't kick me out, you know what I'm saying? But they were definitely like, you're being queer is wrong. Don't tell anybody, you can change. My mother sent me to what I call Hindu conversion therapy, and all these swamis and sadhus, she'd go up to them. She'd be like, my daughter doesn't like men. And then the swami would be like, okay, that's okay. Like, no. I think that and then I'm like, yeah, I'm gay. I like women. Or I said that was the best way that I could say it. And they were like, okay, that's fine. And then my mother was so pissed because she was like, what are they saying this fine for? And she was like, maybe all these swamis are gay and celibate. And I was like, Amma, not all of them are celibate, because we know that story. All of them are just fucking around, like, anyway, tangent. So anyway, so all of this is happening, and I'm feeling, at this point, I'm feeling like so low. Like, I can't get a grip on things. Like, my career is advancing because I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I'll distract myself with work and gigs and touring and doing all of this stuff. But that distraction took a toll, because one day I came home and I just started bawling. And at this time, the best way that I could deal with my emotions was like self-medicating. I was drinking a lot, smoking cigarettes. I didn't smoke a lot of weed, but I was just like trying to maintain, I was like, I know I'm a good person, but why does it feel like all the messaging is telling me that as a queer person, I don't belong, I shouldn't be here, I should die? Whenever I walked down the street, somebody was giving me heat for just being a gender nonconforming person. And we can get into this in the Q&A, but I do feel like some of these things that I'm saying definitely influenced my decision to take tea. And I want to be upfront about that too, because even though I feel like I'm so happy, so much more happier now, I don't feel like a man. And I don't feel like a woman. I feel like I'm a place in between. But because I'm in testosterone, people view me as being a male. And it is what it is. I'm not trying to unpack that. There's a lot of other things I need to unpack. So I'll save that one for when I'm like 70, if I'm still alive, if this world is still around. Anyway, so it was during this time that I was like, I had, you think that if you come out once that people would remember that shit. But when people say that coming out is a process, what they really mean is people have selective hearing, because it didn't matter how much I told my parents that I was queer. I had to like keep telling them. I had to tell them that I was a functioning queer because I had a girlfriend at some point, and my mother flipped. This was even more time and space away from them. There was moments where we weren't even talking at all. And for somebody like me, who was raised in a very thick Tamil-Sri Lankan community, we didn't barely even kick it with white peoples in Lancaster, because everybody was like, oh no, we don't do that. So for somebody like me, I was like, I just had a brain fart. What was the thing that I said right before I talked about the Sri Lankan community?
Coming out?
You said you didn't talk with your parents for
yes,
a long period.
Yes.
You're functional gay. Functional gay. That is a new term.
I love y'all so much. You're the best audience. Thank you, Anastasia. Because I wasn't talking with them, but because I was raised in this very thick Sri Lankan community, I felt like something was missing. Like a lot of the white queer people that I knew, they were like, just fuck your parents, don't care about them, it doesn't matter. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? That's my family. No way. I have to work on this, But some of that was a little bit true. So throughout my whole time, and this is why I love chosen family so much, because I would go and try and tell my parents, look, nothing is wrong. Here are some studies, here are this, here are that. Like, you don't need to be ashamed of me. It's okay. And then there would be pushback, and there would be arguments and fights. And then I would leave and go back to my chosen family. And this is why community is so important, because community is where the healing is. It's where the humor is. Like, I could go to my friends and I'd be like, and then my mother said this, and they'd be like, dang, that's rough. And they would start replaying back to me what my parents said, and it was funny as shit. And then next thing you know, we're laughing about some devastating, horrible shit. Because comedy, as Carol Burnett says, is tragedy plus time. And so it's just that our chosen family helps us kind of like get the pressure off, gives us a moment of reprieve, allows us to feel loved on. I don't know what noise that is. Oh.
Don't matter. Continue. Keep going. Not important.
No, that was me. That was me. I'm the so basically I was now another brain fart just happened. Oh, we were talking about, yes, fuck your family. Thank you. God, you all are the best. Can I take you on the road with me? So what I just felt like I couldn't say that. And so, but we're beyond that. With the chosen family, I felt uplifted, and I felt like we queer people, especially, or people of color, like we know that if somebody wants to break us down, they can break us down. We're sensitive motherfuckers, and we all are. And so we need each other to sort of remind ourselves, like that one you can kind of brush off your shoulders, like you're right. You're not hurting anybody. You're just existing, and you should be allowed to exist the way you want to exist. You're not saying anything to anybody. You're not putting down anybody. Live. And it's my community and my activist community that kept reminding me, like, live. And some of us, like, were barely living, you know what I'm saying? We were young people without a whole lot of like mentors and people like that. So anyway, then at some point, and I'm trying to wrap this story up, I went to, I was telling you that I came home and I was just devastated. I was crying and I was like, God, like everything is out of whack. I know my work is going well, but something, I just feel so empty. And it was because I kept pushing aside all my feelings. I kept disregarding the fact that I was hurting inside. I would not open up to people in specific ways. Like I might share with chosen family to a certain degree, but I wasn't able to be vulnerable, you know what I'm saying, about what it was that I was actually feeling, these feelings of a lack of self-worth, you know? And I woke up and I was crying and I was like, I need to do something. I know that I want to live free. I want to, I don't feel like this body has ever fit me. I love my body, but I don't feel like it's the right fit. We do the best we can with our bodies as trans and gender nonconforming or gender queer people, gender expansive people rather. So, I got back off of tour and this happens. And then I went to Bali and it was on an arts program where there was an artist exchange. And while I was there, I was hanging out with a lot of the Balinese guys. And they reminded me of the men and my cousins in Sri Lanka, where they would hold hands and walk, and they would put flowers behind their ear and pray together and eat together and joke together. And I remember the only fight that I saw between two guys was when one of them thought the other stole his flower from his it's not a turban, but it's like they in Bali they wear a udang. It's a head. It's like a hat. It's like their hat. So and I was like, wow, look at these guys cook together. They eat together. They take care of the children together. There is a different way to be masculine in this world that is not upheld in this world, and especially in the Western states, is that a masculinity looks a specific way. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, is this okay? All my feminist mothers and elders are telling me, Dilo, don't transition. We don't need any more men in this world. Like, don't do this. Like, we need you. You're a fuck you to the patriarchy, just being the way you are. And I was like, but I'm not happy. And this shit is killing me. And you're not in my house every day helping me. Like, I'm on the road a lot alone. This doesn't feel good. I'm isolated. And it was when I came back from Bali and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the most self-loving thing I can. And I'm going to make the decision to get top surgery. I got top surgery before I got on testosterone. And it was the most I say selfish, but it was the most self-loving thing. It was the first decision I had ever made in my life where I wasn't thinking about my family, my community, and my feminist elders, like anything like that. And you know, at this point, me and my parents weren't really talking. I was also like in the community at large, some people were with me, but a lot of the parents were not, you know. And I was just like, I just gotta get happy. I just gotta get happy for me. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I'm like, anybody who needs to do anything, surgery or whatever, we live in this very interesting world where people do things to their bodies. But I'm like, whatever you need to do to get happy, get happy. But I also want to tell everybody, like, y'all are perfect. We were always perfect to begin with. I know we can talk about that later. Anyway, so I got top surgery, and then that was when I started becoming more vulnerable. I started putting more vulnerability in my work, in my artwork. It's the reason why I can share like this with y'all here, you know? And I just kind of like loosened the reins on me. And I was like, if I'm sitting here and talking about being vulnerable and being truthful with your spirit, and if all of my elders have been asking me to be not just truthful in my spirit and my artwork, but also that to walk with integrity looks a very specific way when you're doing it in the world and when you're doing it for yourself, then I can't go backwards. I just have to be in the practice of being vulnerable. Like, it's not one day you just learn that being vulnerable is your strength. It's a practice. And it's a practice of really resilience. Like, everybody talks about resilience like it's a noun, but I see it as a verb. It is a practice that we do, and we create different modes for us to get more better at being us. And that's it. That's all we have to do. I mean, the extension of that is, while we get strong, we become stronger in our political movements. And we could talk about social justice in the Q&A as well. Okay, I know I'm going all over the place, but let me just take you here, because this is where I'll end, is that at some point, I was like, you know what? I have to talk to my family and tell them that this is hard. And at this point, I had a partner. And remember, the last time I had a partner, my parents were just so livid. So this time around, I was like, I'm going to tell them I have a partner. I'm going to tell them that I had top surgery. And this is my truth. I need to let them know, because if they choose to have a relationship with me, that's their decision. If they choose not to, that's also their decision. But I can't be sticking around and waiting around to see if they're going to change anytime. So I go to my mother's house, and she's cooking tofu. And I'm like, Amma, I need to tell you two important things. You're not going to like it. In fact, you're going to get ballistic. And she's like, then don't tell me. And I was like, no, Amma, I have to get this off my chest. Okay, sorry. It's a groaner. Okay. So she's like, oh no, don't worry. I already know. And I was like, what do you know, Amma? And she's like, I know you have a girlfriend. I was like, I do. Are you okay with that, Amma? And she was like, yeah. I was like, she doesn't sound like it. I was like, Amma, but I have to tell you something completely different. And this one you're really not gonna like. This is the bigger thing. And she's like, I already know. I was like, no, you don't know this one, trust me. And she's like, I know that you're going to have surgery. I was like, kind of, Amma. I already had surgery. You already had. And I was like, Amma, are you okay? And she's like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay? She's like, who was with you? And I said, Amma, it was Thambi and Nushi. Amma, are you okay? Like, and she's like, don't take the injections. It's not safe. I was like, injection? How the hell does she know about the injection? I'm like, Amma, don't worry about injections. We're not talking about injections yet. We'll get there, but are you sure you're okay? She's like, yeah. But then I thought this was the calm before the storm. And pretty soon there was gonna be tofu flying over the fucking kitchen. So I came around to where she was at and said, Amma, are you sure you're okay? And she's like, I need ginger. I was like, yes, okay, sure. So she's running low on ginger. She's also running low on her hot cocoa, and she's a fiend for the Trader Joe hot cocoa. So we get to I'm driving to the Trader Joe, and she's in the passenger seat. She's looking out the window. I'm like, what just happened? I just told my Amma and she didn't say nothing. She's looking out the window like nothing happened. I'm like, this is bad news. She's gonna crumble. So we get to Trader Joe. We park in the parking lot. We get in the Trader Joe. I find the ginger. I cannot find the hot cocoa. So I'm going up and down the aisles looking for the hot cocoa. Amma is too. And I finally find her. I said, I'm gonna go to the clerk, go to Trader Joe and ask him where the hot cocoa is. So she goes, meanwhile, I look in the back, I can't find it. I find it on the very far wall, on the very bottom. I don't know why the hot cocoa was there. And I get it and I go up and down the aisle. I look for my Amma, I cannot find her. I felt like a little kid in the grocery store looking for my mother. But this time I felt like she was gonna be the one crumbled on the ground crying. But no, I do see her next to the hot cocoa with Trader Joe. And I came up to her and Trader Joe and I said, hey, Amma, I already got you the hot cocoa. I found it already. And she looks up at me and she looks up at Trader Joe and she says, oh, don't worry. He already got it for me. And I was like, Amma, you just called me he. And I gave her the biggest motherfucking hug. It was the first time I had hugged her like after surgery. And I was just like, oh, I can't, you just call me he. And she said, you're confusing me. And she slapped me across the face. And I know some people won't think that this is movement towards acceptance, but for my immigrant mother, it was. And so I was just so like, there was, she still messes up on my pronouns. I'm like, what to do? I can't be bothered at this point. She's the one who looks a little bit foolish when we're in the grocery store and she's calling me by female pronouns. But usually people think, oh, she's an immigrant, she doesn't get it. But this is where we've landed, right? And through, my parents really did work hard to like be okay, but it's so odd that it was actually the queer community who gave my parents the visibility that they didn't know they needed. And it was through celebrations and hanging out with my queer friends and all of the stuff that my parents are like more expansive than they have ever been before. And also my partner at that time, unfortunately, we just had a divorce after 11 years. But my partner, I still love her, she still loves me, and we're trying to decouple very tenderly. But I love her for so many reasons, but one thing that she did do is create the suturing between the two parties. And for that, I will forever be grateful. Yes, Salfang, I am done actually right now. We can get into the Q&A right now.
Okay, I'm trying not to cry because I don't cry in public, but I just want to say immigrant mother do the Poland business is so profound for me. Mm-hmm. Particular Asian don't have Polans. And mm-hmm. So I just want to really kudos to your mom. I feel like I want to hug her. It's yes. Hugging you. And a lot of but I know that everyone I saw like on mute, but I really do. I don't know how to express my gratitude. And I think that I really would love everyone to unmute yourself and give a big hand.
Y'all have been the best.
And then I know how wonderful the storytelling is. And so I'm going to turn the mic to here so that she can moderate this. And if you guys have questions, and you can either raise your hand or you can put it in the chat, and I will put an order on the chat so people can ask questions. And does it sound good? You guys are the most emotional. They're the most emotional, the silence crowd. I know they are so full of emotion. They are all crying. That's why they're all like in video now. Like Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here. Please ask me any questions. If something is too personal, I'll go around it, but especially with students, I want y'all to know that you can ask me anything. And I thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you being here. I could feel your energy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Your stories, I instantly cried when you brought up your experience with your mom just now, when she said, who was with you? Those 3 words just instantly mean like she cares, she wants to know you're safe, and that's all that matters. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. If anyone has any questions, please, you can unmute yourself and definitely raise your hand and ask us a question. I have some questions myself. Yes.
And if people don't want to ask me via the like, if you want to put it in the chat, please.
Yes, for sure. You could also leave it in the chat and we'll read it out loud. And yes. So, well, one question I thought of was there is definitely an immense lack of Brown and South Asian representation in our media today. What inspired you to be a performer and an artist in an industry that lacks our representation?
Yeah, I know that, actually when I wanted to do this, it was like a lot of South Asian performers and actors and writers and creative people. Like, we just want to be artists and we feel like that's our calling, to be expressive, to share. Sometimes it comes with a lot of privilege. Sometimes it comes with no privilege, but that that so many people find their way regardless of their backgrounds. And I think that there are far more brown people, meaning South Asian brown people in media now, but I think that I think that it's because it became a possibility. The more people that we saw, more people believed that it was possible for them. And when I started, I was just like, I just feel like I want to share a story. I was so moved by and empowered and love hip hop that I was like, this is what I want to do, is express myself in this way, and it to be about not being silent. And that my elders also pushed me to do the work to represent my people, not just on a South Asian tip, but on a queer tip, on a gender nonconforming tip, on a comedic tip. So yeah, that's what I have to say. But I think that we were talking about this earlier, that while there are South Asian people in different shows, we still don't see South Asian stories as much. So that's the representation part. Like, we might have Asian American, we might have Latinx people, we might have Black folks, Caribbean folks, all sorts of folks, right? But the stories are lacking. And case in point, did y'all see Reservation Dogs? I think it's on Netflix. Watch it, it's so good. And it is about the indigenous community in Oklahoma. And that it's not just an indigenous person playing an indigenous person in a show, or an indigenous person having a main character role. It is that this story is about the indigenous community in Oklahoma, and it is so good. Oh, thank you. It's on Hulu. So please go see it, because these are the stories that, like, if you're creatives out there and you enjoy making content or whatever, like, it's not just that we need more representation and visible representation, but we need stories in general.
Right. And I definitely commend you for using your platform to tell your story, because I know that it can be hard within our community to, accept LGBTQ, because it's definitely very looked down upon in our communities. And with that being said, I am also a part of the South Asian community, and I am fully aware of how our aunts and uncles look down on LGBTQ folks. and how ingrained internalized homophobia and misogyny is in our people. I wonder how you get past that and continue to live your own life and do what you love and choose a career that is more exposed to the public eye. It's so much more easier to be targeted when you're in the public eye. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that, like, do you ever fully overcome to certain things? I don't know. I'm thinking as I get older, like everything is just a practice and we just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And maybe sometimes it gets easier the more we do it. But when it came to my community, at some point I was just like, okay, there were some allies in my community that I knew had my back, and they were aunties and uncles. And just knowing that was so freeing, because it made me realize that how my parents were being was not how the whole community felt in general. So it was fine. Like I made friends with those Sri Lankan Tamil elders, or the people my parents' age. And they took me in and they didn't treat me any different. And so it also kind of made me want to push my parents a little bit harder on, I know that they did their best, but it fucked my shit up. You know what I'm saying? And that's what happens, like when you're more caught up into what other people are thinking than what is like how your kid is suffering,
Right. I really admire you for rather than just getting up and leaving your family, you really worked on it and, maintained a relationship. And it's really hard, but,
it fucked me up.
Yeah, no.
I have to say that. I have to say that because I don't want any queer people here to be like, oh, I just need to give my parents a shot. Right. Like, only do it if you feel like they are willing to struggle with you, and do it in spurts. Like, go and have a conversation and then leave before the fire gets too hot, and then stay safe with your own friends. And I know that some of us are like living in our own parents' house and there's nowhere to escape to. Well, do what you need to do to just stay safe and comfortable for a little while and make an exit plan. Make an escape plan.
Karina has a question in the chat. Do you think it has gotten easier to correct people on using correct pronouns?
I think it has gotten easier in the way that there's more conversations about it, but like there's conversations like, my parents still don't understand gender neutral pronouns. And my, a lot of places throughout, like on the coast, in the big cities, people are a little bit more like, they've changed, but so that's why I would say it's easier. But in those places where it is, where people aren't even hearing conversation or language like this, it's still the same. Right. At both ends.
Victoria also has a question in the chat. How does being Tamil-Sri Lankan-American affect your career and your presence in queer spaces?
Yeah. It's so interesting because, now I know that there are so many South Asian queer peoples, and there's even more Tamil Sri Lankan queer people. But coming up, it was in New York and performing and being a queer Tamil Sri Lankan person. It was just me and another person who still lives in Brooklyn, Yalini Dream, and she and I were the only, not just performers, but the only two Tamil Sri Lankan people that anybody knew. And in queer spaces, it was like always, in queer spaces, it was actually easier to some degree because the circles that we floated in were by and large BIPOC spaces, Black, Indigenous, people of color folks. But I used to perform in front of predominantly white audiences from time to time, sometimes Republican audiences. And sometimes they were queer and white. And it was more important for me to talk about race in those shows than, even though you can't really pick it apart like that. But I would say that to be queer even in a peer, like in a similar age range with cis and straight people who were Tamil-Sri Lankan or South Asian was also difficult because you were still seen as an outsider, and some people did. Like I remember there were people who didn't want to even be seen standing and talking with us because somebody might assume that you were gay or that you were queer. So.
Xiaofang has a question in the chat as well. What would you say to people of color about the tendency to tough it out instead of confronting mental illness?
Yeah, I would say don't tough it out. I would say just don't do it. Sometimes we have to be tough, like we have to like sort of like buck up for the day and just handle our business. But especially with this barrage of bad news and what are we doing with our futures and our lives and how am I going to be happy? And this just feels isolating and I feel all alone and I just stay in my room and all of that stuff. I would be like, there is community online and not in your socials. You might hear about it through your socials, but sometimes I'm like, please don't be on your socials too much. Because that it compounds how you're feeling, right? Because you're sitting there comparing yourself to other people, you're seeing people being happy, you're like, how come I can't be happy? Do you get what I'm saying? So I just say like, just stay away from social media, like keep a timer on it when you're not feeling that good, you know what I'm saying? But community is so important. Now, there's therapy, of course, and some people can afford therapy, some people can't. But there are both groups, support groups, and there's also just your friends. And having one-on-one time or like in a big group of people where you're actually able to talk about what's going on for you. Sometimes we think, oh my God, if I start talking, I'm just going to cry and people are going to think that I am too much. But when you start crying and you're too much, though you're not, then other people see like, oh, this person is going through the same thing. And then they get to cry and they get to do it. And then you guys get to like, you could just be with your friends and be like, listen, I'm going to cry for 15 minutes with you and you're going to watch me and then you're going to do it. And this is our practice. And we're going to show each other that it's not too big and that we can get through it. And we might still feel like shitty at the end, but less shitty for sure. And then also like make a plan after those 15 and 15, then we're going to go and eat ice cream and watch a funny show. Do you get what I'm saying? Like you all get to pick how you want to heal with your people. But if it doesn't start off with you being vulnerable and being able to really open up, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Anastasia, she has her hand raised. Would you like
Yes, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. It's not easy, I know, to share your personal experience. And thank you for doing it in a fun way, because I'm sure it wasn't that fun going through all of that. But you made us laugh, you made us relate, and you let us hear your story and to feel it without, I guess, making it too heavy on us, which is also, I feel like, important. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you for clocking that too. And, you know, it goes both ways because I know y'all were with me. I could feel it. And so then I could be more in the lane. And it's so funny because I typically do way more comedy, but I was going all over the place with tangents today because I was like vibing off of what was in the chat and this, that, and other. So like, I'm so happy that we had a good time anyway, because I was like, dang, I didn't barely tell any jokes.
Sorry, I'm so
go ahead.
sorry.
I just wanted to check a time, and there is a 6:15 already. And I think that would it be cool? We take 2 questions. I think that Jerry has a question, and Ariel has a question. Okay, and I'm going to Is it cool? Any dying question before I move on? Oh, actually, before we here move on, I'm sorry here. Okay, go ahead.
So Cherry has a question. How do you choose which stories to curate in revealing experiences and aspects of your life?
I kind of think of a narrative arc, like this is more of a creativity thing. So I think of a narrative arc and what are, so like if the arc is like this, and I start here and I have to create a climax at some point over here, then I think of the pillars that are holding up this arch. And those pillars are stories. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes like this is how I actually teach my writing for performance workshops is we go into very deep sort of excavation of our own personal stories. And you kind of look at the defining moments where there were changes. And this is all through process. But I use that same structure for my own stories, is just building pillars to, so that people can, like, I need to express myself, right? I know what the changes are, and I know that changes make the story. So I kind of frame it on those pillars and then add the stuff in between.
Ariel has a question, and this will be the last question. How do you build self-confidence and self-love when you weren't really allowed to feel and develop these qualities growing up?
Yeah, I think that I became more self-confident the more I shared on stage, but for so long I did not write about my own personal stuff. I was like writing about everybody else's stuff, like anything that I was politically working on, I was writing about that. I never talked about my own journey with gender and sexuality and being an immigrant kid and all of this stuff. But so there was self-confidence in being able to have a platform, but then there was another self-confidence that came from being able to share more vulnerably, whether that was on stage or not. And therapy has helped me. I'm totally like, yay, go therapy. There's also, I just want to tell y'all, there is also the National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network, for people who are seeking therapists who reflect their own identities. I just wanted to give you that. And they're beautiful. And I feel like I learned a lot of the things that I needed to know through, and I've been saying this a billion times, but through community circles. Like there was no language. Now there's more language around mental health than ever before, but there was no language for us to really understand what was happening. But because we were in a practice of being like open with one another and chosen family, that you would learn like, oh, this is how you not just survive these, but then you also can feel like more expansive and ultimately thrive, I guess. So thrive is such an interesting word, but I do believe that it is going beyond just surviving. Like I feel like I'm beyond surviving right now, but then there's certain days that I'm like, oh, I am totally failing at life today. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just like the ups and downs of it all. But whenever I see myself kind of like belittling myself or thinking negative thoughts, I'm like, why are you doing that, D? You would never do that to anybody else who was going through this. Why are you doing it to yourself? And so just that is just pausing is where I get the most like practice of self-love.
I love that. Right. It's just self-love and mental health journey. It's definitely never linear. There will always be those days. And I love how you like get yourself back up by, recognizing that you wouldn't treat anyone else like that. And
I want to make a pitch, and that is a program pitch, and we have our wellness components. We've been doing it since March 2020, and that actually is one of the most successful service that we have provided. We have yoga classes that are 50 people, and older people, young people coming together.
It's the strongest subject. What is it? You have a...
So it is the best showing activities that we have and since the beginning of COVID. And people go to those things, and we are going to have a new series of support group going on in October. I think now what is the October 20 some, and I don't quite remember exact day, but it's going to be on Tuesday. Right?
Yeah, Tuesday, October 12th. It'll run from 12 to 1 every Tuesday.
So
I'm putting our contact in the chat. So if anyone out there wants to get in touch with Sapong or myself, we'd love to hear you. And just in public, Dilo, thank you so much. It was so enjoyable to listen to you and hear your story.
Thank you.
And so check out our calendar event, and you will be on our mailing list. And don't unsubscribe, but don't unsubscribe us from your don't unsubscribe MailChimp, and so you'll get all the updates. So thank you so much, Dilo. And
I have two requests. Just two requests.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind following me at my handle on Instagram, which is right in my name right there.
Okay, before you leave, do it now.
Yeah,
do it now.
Do it. And then the last thing is that I will be in New York from October 13th or so till end of October. So if you see me in the streets, you better say hello. That's all I'm saying.
Great. Okay, any last comment before I cut people off? Okay, let's give some reaction before we say goodbye to Dilo. And thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Hia, as well. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.